back, and I just started making this video and it started raining outside. I wanted to do it outside, it's kind of nice, not as hot today. But the subject today is, should you as a saved Bible-believing Christian get married? The considerations, if you're going to make such a big decision, and what the Bible has to say about it. Now, I want to first go into the scriptures, but I'm going to tell you a bit about, myself and my, dealings with with marriage and some of the things to consider. So we're going to start in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 16. I think we all know this one as the marriage chapter. So it's only fitting that we start there. And, for anyone that doesn't believe in right division, that does not believe that Paul is our apostle today, that, if we consider what he says, that we will have understanding in all things, why is it that the fundamental doctrine for today is pretty much always found in Paul's epistles? I mean, when we're talking about practical application, why is it that mainstream Christianity always turns to Paul's epistles? Maybe because Paul is onto something. And not Paul himself, but Jesus Christ has appointed him this position of practically giving us doctrine to live out in the present age and the age to come. So again, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Come on. Alrighty. Let's start at verse 16. For what knowest thou... Oh wait, no, my bad. We're going to start at verse 2. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Now, the first thing to consider, if you are to get married as a saved Bible-believing Christian, are you struggling with fornication? Are you struggling with sexual urges? If you're not, let that be the first box you check off on whether or not this should be something you pursue, because there's a lot involved in getting married to a woman, especially in this country. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence. Okay, so not recompense evil for evil. Understand the gravity of the situation, that he is to wash his wife in the water of the word, to understand, that he will be, head over her as much as she will even allow. And just respect her as, not a woman, but as an individual, as a saved believer in the body of Christ. Another consideration when getting married is make sure she has believed the right gospel and she actually cares about practical sanctification. She's not just paying lip service so she can get married and be provided for. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. So it goes both ways. We today, in this gynocentric, and then this is a term I would encourage you to look into, gynocentrism is when a society panders or caters to the wishes of one gender, and this being the gender of the woman. Look all around you. We idolize women in this society, and I'm talking about the U.S. Saying almost everything as far as legality and financials are geared towards the woman. And there's a movement that allowed that, but understand that we live in a very woman-centered society. But God, when he's talking about relationships, it's to be equal measures, okay? You can't have a relationship that's successful if one is getting all the benefit and the other person is just, along for the ride. It just doesn't work. It's not self-respecting. Number 4, the wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And we're not going to stop there. So don't get all upset in the comment section, women. And likewise, also the husband hath not power of his body, but the wife. Again, a relationship, it's not 50-50. It's you scratch my back, I scratch yours. It's, I'm more than happy to sacrifice my body, sacrifice my wealth, sacrifice my well-being if you are also willing to do the same. Defraud ye not one another, except it be with consent and for a time. Now, it's not to rag on women. But in this instance, I don't see men pulling sex from women. It just doesn't really happen because we're more sexually oriented. But women, this is a tactic that they use to get what they want. This is a manipulation tactic. They will purposely withdraw sex from a relationship so that the guy will, feel guilty, or he'll do things, or, pick up slack, or whatever. This is not godly. This is not how God would have a marriage to operate or function. And this is because women are being deceived by certain movements and certain, people that'll tickle their ears to say that, they're not getting what they deserve, that they should be getting more, right? Exalting themselves, being very prideful. And see how God says that it should be with consent. So you don't just make up this decision on your own. You should both discuss it. There should be communication, which is another reason why relationships fail. And that's not just romantic, but I don't have many friends because of the simple fact that I communicate. And I don't just communicate when things are going great. I communicate when things aren't going great, because the only way to resolve a problem is you got to know that there is a problem. And because a lot of people don't like to know that there's a problem, they don't want to take the time to fix these things, they get upset, they want to point fingers, and ultimately that dissolves a relationship because this person is contentious, this person is not willing to reason things out and mend things, and has to get other people involved, and it just turns into a hassle. Again, this is not orderly. This is not how godliness operates, and this is not how God would have any relationship to function, not just marriage. That ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer. So if there is to be a season of no sexual intimacy, it should be that you dedicate yourselves more to the Lord. That's just the way it is. And come together again. Not that you just cease. Women can say all that they want. Oh, it's disgusting that men, all you want is sex. All you want is sex. You don't understand the hormones raging in our bodies, okay, that not only first made us attracted to you, but keep us attracted to you. And so, if you don't want us to be attracted to you, go ahead. Withhold sex and watch how the relationship dries up. Watch how a man becomes very bitter with you and doesn't want to be around you anymore. He isolates himself. Maybe he goes in the basement, right, the man cave or whatever, or he goes out with friends more, or he picks up a hobby so he doesn't have to be around you, because you've shown that you don't even want to be intimate with him. And men, they feel closest to a woman through physical touch. So if you withhold that from him, he's going to automatically assume in his mind you don't want anything to do with him. We're going to finish this off. And come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency. So all these ideas are going to come flooding in your mind. The man or the woman is going to start seeking out other voices. And online, this Satan uses the online so much, because you can just go on any YouTube video, type in, oh, this is happening, that's happening, and you're going to have like 10, 20, hundreds of people with their opinion, their take on what you should do. And if you listen to that, guess what? Satan just got a foothold in your relationship. It's probably going to dissolve. And we're going to look at the statistics behind how many marriages are actually successful. And it's scary. I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to get married. I got no desire. Do I burn sexually? Yeah, I do. I'm a man. It's going to happen. But there ain't no women around that are actually saved and believe the gospel. None that I know of. Not even, again, there's none available, so why would I consider it? But verse 6, but I speak to you by permission and not of commandment. So understanding the dispensation of grace, what we live in, Paul is giving us suggestions. Now, there's times he also gives us commandments, but if you don't follow them, your salvation is not in jeopardy, only your reward. And so consider Paul as a father, and he is giving you strong suggestions based off of experience, knowledge, and ultimately wisdom. And he desires greatly that you would listen to him, but you don't have to. And you can see how bad your life and how bad this world gets because they don't listen to the wisdom of God. Verse 7, for I would that all men were even as myself, but every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. Paul is not married. Now, I'm not 100% sure if he was ever married. People will say that he was. I don't believe he was, based on the next verses. I believe that he was a virgin, that he kept himself pure by the grace of God, and he was never married, never touched a woman. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them if they abide even as I. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. And unto the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. And if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put his wife away. Now, we've got a lot of people online right now, professing Christians that are bringing back the law. And they're telling people that, divorce is is adultery. And if you commit adultery, you are in danger of hell. Now, under the law, this is true. But we're not under the law, we're under grace. And so these people have not recognized their sin to the degree where they would turn to Christ for a solution, right? Laws are schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ that we would be justified by faith, that we may be justified by faith. And so these people have not recognized the lesson of the law, and so they are now, based off of Galatians 1, trying to put you back under the law. And it seems good, it seems righteous because divorce is rampant, especially within the church, the professing church. And so they seem to be doing God's work, really trying to call people back to this righteous standard of don't divorce, reconcile back to your wife or your husband, and fulfill ye the law of the Lord. But we're going to see why, if done through the knowledge of grace, I'm sure that would be acceptable to the Lord. But if you're doing it to put yourself back under the law so as to not lose your salvation, that's filthy rags righteousness right there. That's you doing it. Verse 11. But if she depart, let her remain unmarried, or be reconciled to her husband, and let not that husband put his wife away. But to the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother hath a wife that believeth not, and she be pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. And so this is Paul really giving an example of an unbelieving wife or an unbelieving husband. If for whatever reason you got saved while you were married and you realized, oh crap, my partner is not married, is not saved. They have not believed the gospel of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection the third day as the full atonement for their sins. But if they're pleased to dwell with you, because you know what? Some people actually like that you are obeying the words of the Lord and that you have fruit, the fruit of the Spirit is coming through you, and they like that. And they would be more than happy to be with you for the long haul. Don't put that person away just because they're not saved. And we're going to see why. And verse 13, the woman which hath an husband that believeth not, and if he be pleased to dwell with her, let her not leave him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Else were your children unclean, but now they are holy. But if the unbelieving depart, let him depart. Whatever. We're supposed to forgive one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. So if they choose not to be with you anymore, whatever. Just water off a duck's back. It can be easier said than done. Trust me. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God hath called us to peace, right? For all that is within us, let us have peace, with with everyone. I have not 100% quoted that verse, but I think you know the verse I'm talking about. Basically, as much as in you, have peace with all men. There it is. Now, verse 16, for what knowest thou, O wife, whether thou shalt save thy husband? Or how knowest thou, O man, whether thou shalt save thy wife? And so the whole point of staking it out with an unbeliever, if you are married, because we're going to see the importance of marriage spiritually to God, is they, through your example, may eventually recognize their sin and believe the gospel. You don't know that. But what a great testimony and witness that would be, right? Let's see. 1, 2. Yeah, I'm going to stop at verse 16. And now we're going to move on to verse 27 through 34 of chapter 7. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Art thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. And now this is, going back to contentment. You can go back in one of my later videos. I talked about that, but you should be content in all circumstances. And understanding the severity of marriage in terms of God in heaven and what he looks at, that union. If you're married, don't seek to be loosed. And if you're not married, you really shouldn't be seeking a wife. Or if you're a wife, you really shouldn't be seeking a husband. But in verse 28, but if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she hath not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. And so this is really the main reason why Paul is kind of telling people, you should really consider this. Consider getting married. And this culture today just pushes so much. It's like the first thing that comes to our mind. But we're doing it for selfish reasons. Let's be honest with ourselves. We're doing it because we want to have a lot of sex, okay? That's behind closed doors. That's what every woman and what every man is pretty much thinking, is they're ready to get their rocks off because they've been, hopefully keeping themselves pure. And, a lot of them haven't, but whatever. They want to have sex. That's the main reason. I don't care who you are. You don't have to be honest with me. God knows your heart. So they'll do that, but there's so many things to consider. First off, got a lot of guys that they're not financially capable of supporting another person, let alone themselves. So why would you get married? Cool, you're burning, but you can't even support another person. What do you think how do you think that relationship is going to last? You don't got a house. You don't have a good stable job. Maybe you don't even have, the skills, social skills to put up with another person. Maybe you yourself are a wreck mentally. Maybe you yourself are a wreck, as far as you can't clean, so your house is a disaster. Now you expect someone else to move in there and deal with that? I mean, you should really take a good look at yourself before you expect someone else to want to live with you. Can you live with yourself, let alone someone coming in and living with you? I mean, do you think that that's a functional relationship, that someone else has to put up with all your garbage, all your, setbacks and drawbacks? Don't you think that you should do at least a good job of some type of sanctification? Or you should think about others, exalt others more highly than yourself. So, take these things into consideration. Verse 29, but this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remaineth that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they wept not, and they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, and they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. But I would have you, without carefulness, he that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, how he may please his wife. That's really the main difference, right? So when we're talking about eternity, and we're talking about a heavenly reward at the judgment seat of Christ, those that are married, unless you've got a great wife that's going to allow you to really set apart that time to read your Bible, to teach it to her so she can be washed by the water of the word, to participate in a ministry on top of taking care of the house, on top of taking care of the children if you have children, on top of working your job, on top of whatever she may want, trinkets or stuff done around the house, or vacations. If you can find a wife, and this is why you got to have a believing wife if you want this to even be possible, you can still serve the Lord in a marriage, and it can be a very good thing. But let's just be honest with ourselves. Most people that get married are not thinking, does this person believe the gospel, and are they moving towards godliness and sanctification? They don't think about that. I mean, you can't even go into a church today and not hear, a slew of different gospels. So obviously the mindset is not the spiritual, it's not the heavenly. Right? Jesus told us to store up treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not corrupt. Not treasures on earth. Remember, he went to the one man who's going to build a bigger storehouse. And he says, "Thou fool, do you not know that your soul is required of you today?" So this man had focused his entire life on building up treasures on earth. And that night, his soul was required of him. And he had not believed the gospel of his salvation at that time. And guess what? Everything that he had done on this earth will be burned up. And he will be burned up in hell if he did not believe that gospel. And not burned up, suffer eternally, suffer hellfire. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth for all eternity, and there's nothing you can do. You are eternally separated from the love of God, the goodness of God, the mercy of God, because thou did not recognize your sin and believe in the death, burial, and resurrection the third day as the full atonement for those sins. That's what matters above all else. And so, spiritually speaking, marriage should be the same thing, though there is a carnal aspect. But he that is married, but I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. And so when you're not married, you can spend so much more time in the scriptures, as you should. You can spend so much more time making studies, if that is something you want to do. Teaching sound doctrine, which is something you should do to anyone around you that's willing to listen. Starting a ministry, whatever that may look like. If you have a right dividing Bible-believing church around you that preaches the gospel of grace, attend that church and see how you can get plugged in. As a single individual, you have all the free time. You can make the time. I have it, and I'm very content in it. It took me a while, though. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I have dated women. I have done things I'm not proud of as well before I was saved. But I had talked to Christian women and asked about the gospel. I've been on eHarmony. I've done all these rigmaroles, and I'm just going to be honest with you. All the women I've talked to are very, very carnal. They do not care about the things of the Lord, and I'm just so happy I never got into a union with any of them. And what is a union, right? A spiritual union in the eyes of God? Well, let's first go to Mathew chapter 19, verse 8. This is going to be the objection a lot of people go to because they want to put you under the law. But churchianity ain't going to really read this one. You'll see why. He saith unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. So, during the time of Jesus' earthly ministry, also during the time of Exodus and Deuteronomy, when Moses was around, he most assuredly gave the Israelites the ability to divorce because they just didn't care about, sticking it out with one partner. They didn't care about monogamy. They didn't care about the spiritual significance of whatever God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. They did not understand that when you have sex with a woman, the two become one flesh. So in the eyes of God, you are spiritually one. So that's just how significant it is spiritually. And in fact, as soon as you have sex with someone, you're technically married to them in the eyes of God. Marriage, as far as a government institution, is only a recent thing. There used to be, covertures where you would, sign a type of paper, and two families, obviously the man's family and the woman's family, would be there to keep the two accountable. But there wasn't an establishment where a guy would come in and say, by the power invested in me, you two are now married. This thing wasn't around. This is a new invention. And it's wicked, quite honestly. But in the eyes of God, He did allow for divorce to be an option. But remember what He says. This was not always so. In the beginning, this was not so. So in the beginning, He's talking about Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2, verses 23 through 24. Where when Eve was created out of Adam, He said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. Let's actually go there quickly. I don't want to misquote that. It's just such a crucial verse here. 23 through 24. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Right? From the beginning. And even from the beginning, we can even talk about how in heaven, there will not be marriage. Men and women will not be married. But, they will be as the angels. There will be no sex, okay? And we're going to go into another verse of what marriage would be considered in the body of Christ. But it's good to just know that this whole divorce nonsense was permitted by God, but it was because of the hardness of the hearts of man. And so, is it a sin for you to get divorced? Yes. Is it a sin for you to, have sex with another person while you're married? Yes, it is called adultery. Will you lose your salvation? No. Will you lose reward at the judgment seat of Christ? Yes. So is there a punishment for, willful disobedience and sin? Yes, there's still punishment, but it's spiritually and it's eternally. It's not, you're probably not going to see it now, especially since the culture promotes it so much. I mean, you can go down the street and there's an annulment office. For about $7,000, you can get your divorce, you can get your marriage completely annulled for $7,000. And in fact, it's so sneaky that the man or the woman can actually get all this process done behind your back, put those papers on your desk, and if you don't sign them, the divorce lawyer or whatever is going to keep getting charged. And if that person doesn't have the money, guess who's going to be paying for it? You. And so if you don't sign those papers, you're just losing money every day. It's a very wicked process we got here. You can tell that it all goes back to the course of this world, that the love of money is the root of all evil. And that's what really causes this to be a profitable organization and why it's so widespread and popular. We can go to Romans chapter 7, verses 2 through 6. Romans chapter 7, verses 2 through 6. Okay. For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband. The law. We're not under the law, we're under grace. But Paul does make these distinctions because he is a Jew. He's speaking to Jews that are in this audience, and they would understand what he's talking about, but he's going to give the parallels to grace. Is bound to her husband so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. And spiritually speaking, this is how we should look at it. This is why we should stick it out if we do decide to get married and shouldn't just, throw it away and get divorced. So then, if, while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. This is the adultery. But if her husband be dead, she is free from the law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. And so, it's not, you get married and you can never get married again. When the person dies, you most certainly can get married again. So, there's, God is fair, God is just. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law. Dead to the law, there we go. By the body of Christ, that ye should be married to another. And here's who we should be married to. married to another, verse 4, even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto God. And so now our marriage is with Christ. And, this isn't, homosexual or nothing like that. This is spiritual. Spiritually speaking, we are joined together with Christ in one body. It's his body. He's forming a spiritual body. This is the mystery that Paul was, revealed to by Christ. You can go to the book of Ephesians, and he talks about, this mystery that, we will all, we are all fellow heirs, joint heirs with Christ in one body. He's creating a spiritual body, both Jew and Gentile, in this present dispensation of grace. And now we're going to go to Mathew chapter 10, verses 2 through 12. And not Matthew, Mark. Mark chapter 10, verses 2 through 12. And the Pharisees came to him and asked him, "Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife?" tempting him. And he answered and said unto them, "What did Moses command you?" And they said, Moses suffered to write a bill of divorcement and to put her away. And so this is, the deceitful heart of man. That's not what Moses commanded. That's what he said after they had come to him and said, "You know what, we're tired of our wives and we want out." And so he's like, "You know what, because of the hardness of your heart, I'll suffer you to divorce them and to give them an annulment, basically, a divorce paper." But it was after they had, rejected the commandment of God. And Jesus answered and said unto them, "For the hardness of your heart he wrote you this precept. But from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female." Really, just takes the transgenderism and just throws it right out the window. All right, man, you can chop off your dinger, you're still a man. Right? You got an XY chromosome. Woman, you can go, chop your boobs off, and you can go, attach some dinger down there and get all the testosterone injections. But at the end of the day, God still created you a woman, and you can try to deceive yourself and get the knowledge of God out of you, but the truth is sure, and you can do nothing against the truth before the truth. And verse 7, "For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh," twain being separate. "What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder." And this is the main contention. This is why I'm just not a fan of divorce, and not just from a spiritual standpoint, from a carnal standpoint. Because of the fact that God spiritually joins you, and now man comes in, and they think that they got some kind of authority, and they create the divorce institution, where you can come in, you can pay a fee, and just because you're a little disgruntled, you can it's so easy. It's like taking candy from a baby. You can just so easily go in there for a little bit of money. It's gotten cheaper and cheaper over the years, and you can completely destroy the union. There are no more checks and balances against sin in this nation. The government does not even uphold laws that would keep, criminals off the street. The Marriage Institute is a sham and a joke. So men and women aren't even able to check each other's sin nature anymore there. So you can't even see how much of a sinner you are in a relationship. You can just leave. We don't have nationalism, so cultures aren't preserved where people would be basically kept in check through social order, right? People would be like, "Oh, well, that's wrong and this is wrong," and there would just be certain traditions ingrained in the culture that people would live by. We don't have that anymore, right? The U.S. is a melting pot of cultures. And so we don't say things and we don't enact certain laws because we don't offend the masses. And so any kind of tradition is gone. There's no traditions in this country. Dude, most people don't even know the Constitution. Yet they'll sit there and be like, "Oh, praise America," and "Oh, Trump's coming back," or "Biden this or that." You don't even know the Constitution, you idiot. You shut up. But whatever. Now, the main reason divorce and remarriage isn't even really talked about in churches is because a majority of people in church have been divorced. They really have. Or if they haven't been divorced, they're on the road to it. And so, no, they don't want to talk about it because they're going to get really offended. It's going to get them pretty upset because they understand it's a reality. And because they're under the law, they're not under grace, they know what the Bible says about it. So they don't want to hear that, maybe they're going to go to hell because of this. They don't want to hear that. But they also don't want to hear that, we're under grace. We're not under the law. Because then that, bruises their pride and their ego. And that's even worse. I just want to give one statistic. We're going to wrap this up. If you go to the Forbes Advisor, it says in 2022, a total of 673,989 divorce and annulments occurred across the 45 U.S. states. That report, during the same year, 2,065,905 marriages occurred. So, you just do some basic statistics. That's around 35% of divorce and annulments during that time. But here's the big kicker. Oh, well, only a third of people are getting divorced or annulled. That's still 2/3. It's still a profitable endeavor. All right, well, let's look at this. Now, how many marriages end in divorce? 43% of which are dissolved. Second and third marriages actually fail at a far higher rate. Though with 60% of second marriages and 73% of third marriages. Now, these are the ones that are actually, documented. When you actually go in, you file the paperwork, and it's, successfully annulled and you are divorced. How many people are living together and they hate each other's guts? How many people are so discontent, unhappy, they don't even spend time together. I know so many couples, they don't even sleep in the same bed. They're not, people are like, eventually, you're in a relationship and you just become friends. So what is that? Okay, you guys sleep in separate rooms, you don't talk to each other. You guys have, such busy lives that you barely even see each other except for when you go to bed. And even then, you're not even in the same bed. It's a joke, man. I'm tired of the older generation coming in and trying to tell my generation, it's called gaslighting, feeding us a crock of garbage and saying, oh, well, you should just get married, you're a good-looking chap, you should just find a woman and settle down. And they don't give you any reasons. They give you no instruction. They don't give you any reasons. They don't look at stats. They don't look at the world around them and say, try to give you a little bit of caution. They don't try to give you any wisdom or insight. And so you got to do it. And I think the biggest problem with my generation is we come off as very prideful. And we come off as prideful because we have all this knowledge at our fingertips. And so it's probably one of the first generations in history where the younger generation actually knows more than the older generation. And because there's been such a shift due to technology, the experiences that my generation is having in comparison to the older, whatever advice that they can give us is no longer applicable. If you were to tell me, for relationship sense, I've tried this. Oh, just bring some flowers and be a nice man and all this other kind of stuff and they'll accept you. That does not work, okay? Because of the nonsense that's being fed into both men and women's minds and being tuned against each other, they look at that as weakness. You got to be, you got to be a jerk. You got to be aloof. You got to be ungodly. You got to be hateful. You got to be disgusting. You got to treat the person like crap. And that's what, keeps attraction, because it's all about feelings. It's all about making the other person feel a certain way, good or bad or indifferent, and that's what makes people stick together. You got to treat people like crap so that they keep coming back. And I'm not into that, man. I'm not into a culture that would allow for marriages to even be divorced. I'm not into a culture that keeps the government in charge of marriages, so that they're constantly given money from it. I'm hearing Christians tell me, professing Christians tell me, that the main reason that they got married is because of a tax write-off. It is such a joke, man. So take these things into consideration. Know what the Word of God says. Don't feel condemned if you were divorced. If you are considering to get married, consider these things. And if you're not married, you know what? We're not long for this world. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Your heart could collapse. You could, whatever. Something could happen. You get a brain aneurysm in your sleep, and you could go to be with the Lord tonight. To worry about these things is just not wise. Think of your life as day to day. If you cannot find enough things to keep you occupied as a single man day to day, that should be your focus. And there's more than enough, trust me. And if you start a ministry, you start researching these things in Scripture, you find a teacher that teaches you sound doctrine. If you don't know any, come to me. Go in the comment section. I can send you a slew of good Bible-believing, right-dividing grace preachers that will bring you unto the knowledge of the truth. I'm not for everyone. I'm only on here because, again, I am single. I have no local body or assembly to go to. No one in my life wants to hear the gospel or sound doctrine. And so I would like to at least come on here, do a study, and, be rewarded. I don't want to just sit around and feel like I'm doing nothing and actually, as a result, do nothing. I want a heavenly reward. I don't want to waste my time. I want to redeem my time, for the days are evil. Thank you for listening, and just understand that this stuff is so important. So important.